What happens when Hollywood royalty collides with royal controversy live on television? Today, we're unpacking one of daytime TV's most explosive moments when Angelina Jolie delivered a masterclass in grace under pressure while dismantling Meghan Markle's carefully crafted narrative. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. By the end, one guest was speechless and the other earned a standing ovation. Subscribe and leave a comment below, because this story will challenge everything you think you know about celebrity interviews. The View studio hummed with anticipation as the iconic theme faded. Whoopi Goldberg sat center stage, flanked by Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, Alyssa Farah Griffin, and Sunny host. The energy felt different, electric, as if everyone sensed something major was about to unfold. "Ladies and gentlemen," Whoopi began, her voice steady with authority, "we have two very special guests. First, actress, director, and humanitarian Angelina Jolie." The audience erupted as Angelina walked on stage, commanding instant respect. She moved with the effortless elegance that has captivated audiences for decades, offering warm waves to the crowd before taking her seat on the famous couch. "And our second guest," Whoopi continued, "the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle." Meghan emerged from backstage, her smile bright yet calculated. She was clearly prepared, outfit flawless, hair immaculate. But in her eyes, perhaps a hunger hinted at an agenda beyond simple promotion. As both women settled in, the contrast was immediate. Angelina sat naturally, fully present. Meghan appeared to be performing even in stillness posture, perfect hands precisely placed. "So wonderful to have you both here." Joy Behar jumped in, her trademark enthusiasm on display. "Angelina, you're here promoting your new film about refugee advocacy. And Meghan, you're discussing your upcoming Netflix documentary series. Two very different projects, both focused on important social issues." "Thank you for having me," Angelina said graciously. "This film is very close to my heart. I've spent years working with refugees around the world, and I wanted to create something that gives voice to their stories, their resilience." "That's beautiful," Sarah Haynes said. "Your work with the UN has been so impactful. I've been privileged to witness incredible strength in the most challenging circumstances," Angelina replied. "These are people who've lost everything but refuse to lose hope. They've taught me more about courage than any role I've played." Meghan, waiting for her moment, leaned in. "I completely understand that passion for humanitarian work. My own journey has opened my eyes to so many injustices, particularly around mental health and women's empowerment. Sometimes people don't realize how isolating it can be when you try to use your platform for change while facing constant criticism, even in what should have been Angelina's moment." Meghan had redirected the conversation to her own struggles. The panel exchanged quick glances. Viewers at home could feel the shift. Sunny host, ever diplomatic, tried to steer carefully. "Both of your platforms have brought attention to important causes. Meghan, tell us about your Netflix series." "It's about authenticity and breaking free from systems that try to silence you," Meghan said, settling back with visible satisfaction. "Many women, especially women of color, relate to feeling trapped by institutions that smile at you publicly but undermine you privately." The statement hung in the air. Everyone knew which institution she meant. The implication was clear. This wasn't just promotion, it was a calculated strike. Alyssa Farah Griffin, drawing on her political background, recognized the moment. "That's a powerful theme. Angelina, in your humanitarian work, have you encountered similar institutional challenges?" Angelina's response was measured and thoughtful. "Real change happens when you focus on the work rather than the obstacles. When you're truly committed to a cause, you find ways to serve regardless of circumstances. The refugees I work with, people who've fled war zones, don't have institutional support. They build their own networks of resilience." It was subtle but pointed, without confronting Meghan directly. Angelina highlighted the difference between genuine service and self-serving narratives. Meghan's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course," Meghan replied, "but it's important to acknowledge that some of us have had to fight battles on multiple fronts. When your character is constantly being assassinated in the press while you're trying to do good work, it takes a toll." Character assassination is a strong term, Joy Behar noted, her journalist instincts kicking in. "Are you referring to specific incidents?" "I'm referring to a pattern," Meghan replied, her voice taking on the practiced cadence she uses in serious interviews. "A pattern of systematic undermining that goes beyond normal media scrutiny. When you're trying to modernize ancient institutions while also fighting racial bias, the pushback can be overwhelming." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. This was clearly building to something larger. Sensing the tension, Whoopi tried to steer things back. "Let's talk about your current projects. Angelina, your film premieres next month, correct?" "Yes, and I'm hoping it will encourage people to support refugee resettlement programs in their own communities," Angelina answered. "Real change happens at the grassroots level when ordinary people decide to get involved." Again, there was that subtle emphasis on action over complaint, service over self-promotion. Meghan began to look less comfortable, realizing her usual narrative techniques weren't landing as they typically did. She shifted in her seat, frustrated that her attempts to center the conversation on her own victimhood weren't drawing the sympathy she expected. The View panel knew when a guest was pushing an agenda, and Angelina's presence seemed to highlight how calculated Meghan's approach was. "You know what?" Meghan said, her voice sharpening. "I think it's easy for some people to talk about grassroots change when they haven't dealt with the kind of institutional racism and systematic silencing that I've faced. Not everyone has had the privilege of being universally beloved by the media." The comment was clearly directed at Angelina, and the studio fell silent. This was unprecedented territory for The View, a direct confrontation between two high-profile guests. Angelina's expression stayed serene, but there was steel in her eyes. "I'm sorry. Are you suggesting my humanitarian work has been easy because of media treatment?" "I'm suggesting some of us have had to fight harder for our voices to be heard," Meghan replied, doubling down. "When you're dealing with palace sources briefing against you, tabloids twisting every word, and family members refusing to defend you, it's a different kind of challenge." Sarah Haynes looked genuinely uncomfortable. "Meghan, those are serious allegations about your time in the royal family." "They're not allegations, they're facts," Meghan said firmly. "And it's important people understand the difference between someone who gets to choose their humanitarian causes and someone who is silenced when trying to speak up about mental health, racism, and basic human dignity." The implication was clear. Meghan was suggesting Angelina's decades of work were less meaningful because she hadn't faced the same personal struggles. Whoopi, who had moderated countless heated discussions, could see it spiraling. "Ladies, let's take a step back," but Angelina raised a gentle hand. "No, it's all right, Whoopi. This is an important conversation." She turned to Meghan, calm but firm. "I've spent 20 years working in refugee camps, war zones, and disaster areas. I've held dying children. I've sat with mothers who watched their families torn apart by violence. I've been threatened, criticized, called everything from a homewrecker to a publicity seeker." The studio was dead silent. Even the camera operators seemed to lean in. "But never once have I made my personal struggles the center of the story when discussing the suffering of others. The refugees I work with don't have Netflix deals to tell their stories. They don't have media platforms or royal titles or the chance to sit on television and demand sympathy. They have nothing but resilience and hope that someone will help them rebuild." Meghan's face went pale. This wasn't the response she expected. "I think you're misunderstanding," she said, trying to recover. "I never said your work wasn't important. I'm pointing out that different people face different obstacles, and some of us have had to overcome additional barriers. Additional barriers. Angelina repeated slowly. You mean like being born into a war zone? Watching your village burn? Walking hundreds of miles with small children to reach a refugee camp where you might, if you're lucky, get one meal a day? Joy Behar, rarely speechless, watched with evident fascination. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a masterclass in perspective. That's not what I meant, Meghan said, her voice defensive. Obviously, those situations are tragic. But I'm talking about institutional racism within powerful families, about being gaslit and isolated. You were isolated, Angelina said, her tone remarkably calm. In a palace with a staff of hundreds, with access to the best healthcare, education, and resources in the world, and with a platform that reaches millions globally. Sunny host tried to intervene. I think what Meghan is trying to express is that even with privilege, there can be unique challenges related to race and family dynamics. Of course there can be, Angelina agreed immediately. Those challenges are real and they matter. But when you're on national television discussing humanitarian work, maybe the focus should be on the people who actually need help, rather than on how hard it's been for you to help them. The comment landed like a thunderbolt. Meghan's mouth opened slightly, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. I can't believe you said that, Meghan managed. You have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what it's like to have an entire institution turn against you. To have your own family participate in smear campaigns, to be driven to thoughts of suicide because of the pressure. You're absolutely right, Angelina replied, without missing a beat. I don't know what that's like. But I do know what it's like to visit a refugee camp, where mothers are so malnourished they can't produce milk for their babies. I know what it's like to meet teenage girls who've been sold into trafficking. I know what it's like to work with survivors of genocide who still wake up screaming every night. The comparison was devastating in its simplicity. Alyssa Farah Griffin, drawing on her years in politics, recognized a defining moment. Angelina, how do you maintain focus on the work when dealing with personal challenges? You remember why you started? Angelina answered, her gaze fixed on Meghan. You remember that your personal pain, no matter how real, doesn't compare to the suffering of people who have no voice, no platform, no resources. You use whatever privilege you have, whatever platform you've been given to serve others rather than yourself. Meghan's face was flushed, her composure slipping. So you're saying my pain doesn't matter? That speaking out about racism and mental health struggles is selfish? I'm saying that when you're discussing humanitarian work, the focus should be on the people you're trying to help, not on how hard it's been for you to help them. Angelina replied evenly. I'm saying that real service requires putting other people's needs before your own narrative. The audience was riveted. This wasn't just drama. It was a profound difference in worldview playing out in real time. Whoopi tried again to regain control. Ladies, I think we're all passionate about important causes here. But Meghan wasn't finished. I think it's incredibly privileged to suggest someone shouldn't speak about their own struggles when those struggles directly affect their ability to help others. My story matters because it shows other women, especially women of color, that they don't have to stay silent in the face of injustice. Your story absolutely matters, Angelina agreed, surprising everyone. But so do the stories of the people you claim to be helping. And right now, in this conversation about humanitarian work, we've spent 15 minutes on your personal grievances and roughly 2 minutes on the people who need help. The observation hit like a perfectly aimed arrow. Meghan sat with her mouth slightly agape as the truth of Angelina's words settled over the studio. Even the seasoned panel seemed stunned by the precision of the critique. That's not fair. Meghan stammered, her voice losing its usual confident cadence. You're trying to make it seem like I don't care about the people I'm trying to help, am I? Angelina asked quietly. Because in the 20 minutes we've been here, you've mentioned your struggles about 15 times, and the people your documentary is supposed to help exactly twice, once in passing and once to relate their stories to your own experience. Sarah Haynes glanced down at her notes, clearly fact-checking in real time. Her slight nod suggested the count was accurate. I think context matters, Meghan said, her voice rising. People need to understand the obstacles I face to appreciate the work I'm doing now. Do they? Angelina countered, leaning in. When I make a film about refugees, do I spend most of the interview talking about how hard it was to get financing? Do I discuss how exhausting the travel was, or how the media criticized my motives? Or do I talk about the incredible people I met and the urgent need for support? The panel exchanged glances. They knew the answer. Over the years, Angelina had consistently centered the people she aimed to help rather than her own journey. That's different, Meghan insisted, though her argument was fading. You don't understand the unique pressures of being in the royal family. You're absolutely right. I don't, Angelina said readily. But I do understand the pressure of being a single mother protecting your children while working in dangerous locations. The pressure of constant scrutiny over every relationship, every adoption, every parenting choice I've made. The pressure of having my mental health questioned, my motives analyzed, my life dissected in tabloids for more than 2 decades. The studio was silent. Even Whoopi hesitated to interrupt. But here's the difference, Angelina continued, steady and clear. I learned early that my personal struggles, no matter how real or painful, are not the story. When I advocate for people literally fighting for survival, the story is them. Always them. Meghan's face was visibly flushed, her composure gone. So you think I should stay silent about institutional racism and the mental health crisis I experienced? I think, Angelina said, pausing deliberately, there's a time and place for personal testimony, and a time and place for selfless advocacy. True advocates know the difference. Joy Behar, uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Angelina, that's a strong statement. Are you saying personal experience can inform advocacy work? Not at all, Angelina replied immediately. Personal experience absolutely should inform advocacy. The question is whether you're using your experience to serve others. We're using others' suffering to serve your own narrative. The clarity was devastating. Meghan looked as if she'd been struck. I can't believe this, she said, her voice shaking. I came to talk about important social issues, okay? And instead, I'm being attacked for sharing my story of overcoming adversity. No one's attacking you, Sunny Host said gently, trying to diffuse things. This is a passionate discussion about different approaches to advocacy. But Angelina wasn't finished. Meghan, can you tell us without mentioning your own experience why people should care about your Netflix documentary? What specific issues does it address? How does it help the communities you say you serve? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Meghan opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. It's about empowering women to speak their truth in the face of institutional oppression. Which institutions? Angelina pressed. What specific forms of oppression? Which communities are helped? What resources are provided? What measurable outcomes are you aiming for? With each question, Meghan seemed to shrink further into her seat. It was becoming painfully clear her project was more about her story than helping others. I don't think I should have to defend my humanitarian efforts to someone who's minimizing my experiences, Meghan said, her voice taking on a petulant tone at odds with her usual polish. I'm not minimizing your experiences, Angelina replied calmly. I'm asking you to distinguish between sharing your experiences to help others, Bex, and sharing other struggles to validate your own. The distinction was so clear. so precisely drawn that even Meghan seemed to realize she'd been outmaneuvered. Alyssa Farah Griffin, sensing a teaching moment, addressed the audience. "I think we're witnessing a crucial conversation about the difference between advocacy and autobiography." "Exactly," Angelina said, turning to the camera. "When we have platforms, privilege, and resources, we have a choice. We can use them to amplify voices that would otherwise go unheard. We can use other people's struggles to amplify our own." Meghan sat in stunned silence, realizing her words had been turned against her with surgical precision. Sensing a natural close, Whoopi moved to wrap up. "This has certainly been an enlightening discussion about the responsibilities that come with a public platform." "It has," Angelina agreed. Then she turned to Meghan one last time. "And I hope your documentary succeeds in helping the people it's meant to serve because, at the end of the day, that's what really matters." The comment was gracious on the surface, but carried an unmistakable challenge. Meghan managed a weak smile and a barely audible thank you, clearly humbled. As the show cut to commercial, the audience began to applaud, but not equally. The ovation was for Angelina, who delivered a masterclass in grace under pressure while exposing the emptiness of performative activism. Meghan sat there, her carefully planned appearance having backfired, while Angelina acknowledged the applause with the same quiet dignity she'd shown throughout the exchange in under 30 minutes. One of Hollywood's most respected figures had dismantled one of the world's most calculated self-promoters without raising her voice or abandoning her principles. It was a moment replayed and analyzed endlessly, remembered as the day authentic service triumphed over manufactured victimhood on live television. So, what did you think of this display of grace under pressure? Did Angelina Jolie handle it perfectly, or should she have been more diplomatic? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe,